Maurice Massey raised lavender just outside the town of Valençol in the south of France. Going out to his field, he encountered a dull oval shape about 11 feet wide and 8 feet high. Resting on its belly with 6 legs, it reminded him of a spider. There was also a pair of child-sized entities scrutinizing the lavender. When Massey tried to get closer, one of the creatures paralyzed him by pointing a rod at him. They boarded the craft, and for 15 minutes after the departure, Massey was unable to move. The weather had been dry for some time, but the landing site was a sopping wet crater. About a day later, the wetness was gone and the ground turned hard as concrete, while the rest of the field's earth remained crumbly. For months afterward, Massey suffered from a strange sleeping disorder, where he slept 15 hours at a stretch, which wasn't normal for him. French government agencies and police gathered interesting data from the site. The landing area showed highly elevated levels of calcium when compared to the rest of the field. Dents and a 10-foot wide spherical space showed that something had been there. The lavender plants around the crater were sick and dying, and for 10 years nothing would grow in that spot. In September 1957, columnist Ibrahim Suud received a letter from a fan who had a fantastic story and the proof to back it up. The envelope contained 3 white metal pieces, allegedly from a disc that had disintegrated above a beach in Ubatuba, Sao Paulo. The fan, who claimed to have witnessed the event, was never identified. The testing done on one of the pieces destroyed it, but gave interesting findings. It was revealed to be magnesium with above average density, and when the study stated that the magnesium was purer than that which human technology could produce, the fragments became an overnight sensation in UFO circles. The University of Colorado tested one of the 2 remaining pieces and found that it wasn't as pure, but since the Brazil sample no longer existed, its purity couldn't be verified. However, the Colorado study did concede that their piece was packed with an abnormal amount of strontium, something not found in normal magnesium. The metal had also been strengthened during its manufacturing with a process called directional crystallization, a technique unknown in 1957 when the fragments were mailed to the columnist. In September 1965, 2 South African police constables were on night patrol. They were driving on the Pretoria-Bronkhorstsport highway. Their evening shift so far uneventful, but then midnight changed everything. It's unclear who first saw the contraption sitting on the highway, but it was a sight that neither would ever forget. It certainly wasn't terribly frightening. The craft was a simple copper-colored disc. But what struck Constables John Lockham and Koos de Klerk was what happened when the UFO sped off seconds after they sighted it. The craft shot away in a rush of speed and heat, spewing an overload of fire that bounced 3 feet off the asphalt. The highway actually caught fire. An area of 6 feet in diameter burned so intensely that gravel separated from the tar. During the official investigation that followed, it was found that a section of the road had collapsed, most likely under the weight of the large UFO. Samples taken from the carnage were sent away for analysis, but the results were never made public. A case occurred in August 1952 that stumped the investigators of Project Blue Book. That night, Deputy Sheriff Mott Parton responded to a call that 3 terrified children had shown up at the caller's farmhouse. They were scouts claiming that their scoutmaster, Sonny Desvergers, had collapsed while investigating strange lights on a rural road in Palm Beach. Going back to the scene, the cops didn't have to search long. Desvergers emerged from the trees in a traumatized state, which the 19-year police force veteran Parton felt was genuine. The scoutmaster claimed that he'd been attacked by a UFO and had 3 tiny burn holes in his hat and singe marks on his arms. The case eventually landed on the desk of Blue Book investigator Edward Ruppelt. Investigations at the scene didn't immediately find anything conclusive, and Ruppelt learned from the scouts that they never saw the original lights that had caught Desvergers' attention. However, the boys did witness subsequent lights, including a red light that seemingly caused their scoutmaster to faint. Desvergers' story held despite Ruppelt's attempts to trip him up, but Ruppelt smelled a publicity stunt for financial gain when Desvergers hired a press agent and made ridiculous claims to reporters. Then Desberger's history of lying, going AWOL, and car theft caught up with him. Ruppelt was now weary of him, and his press agent abandoned him. Although he felt certain that the sighting was a hoax, Ruppelt was at a loss to explain how the whole thing was staged. Nor could he or the FBI lab discover what had burned the Scoutmaster's cat, or how some of the grass taken from the site had charred roots while their leaves were fine. Nothing prevents a compulsive liar from having a supernatural experience. Either Desberger's told the truth, somewhat embellished, or he managed to pull off a hoax that left one of the best investigators in the business without answers. In June 1947, Harold Dahl and his crew claimed that they'd survived a frightening encounter that damaged their boat, injured one of them, and killed their dog. Navigating around Maury Island, Dahl's men noticed 6 donut-shaped objects above them. One was faltering badly. Before it flew away with the others, the UFO spewed a stream of shiny flakes. These caused the harm to the witnesses. The next day, Dahl was cornered by a man in black who told him to mind his own business. But the story had already reached Kenneth Arnold, who had his own historic sighting. He met with Dahl, who handed over some of the debris, but not the photos he had snapped of the UFOs. Perhaps due to the local men in black and FBI threatening legal steps, if Dahl didn't drop the matter and admit it was a hoax, Dahl eventually did exactly that. 2 Air Force officers, Captain Davidson and Lieutenant Brown, were going to take the debris to Fort Hamilton for analysis, but their B-25 went down shortly after takeoff. The military cordoned off 150 acres around the crash site, but abandoned most of the wreckage after a week. Some speculated that they were done tinkering because they had found the extraterrestrial flakes. 2 days after the Air Force fatalities, another plane crashed, this time with Arnold on board. He barely survived. The Tacoma Times claimed that the B-25 was deliberately downed to prevent the fragments from reaching Fort Hamilton. 2 weeks after publication, the journalist who wrote the article, Paul Lance, died from a cause that couldn't be identified, despite a 36-hour autopsy. The case remains torn in 2 camps, those who believe Dahl faked the whole thing, and those who feel that the key truth seekers were silenced, and that Dahl was frightened into saying it was a hoax.